what gives you the best experience, either audio or visual. So you guys have been using Zoom as a way to have their meetings?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, so actually, and I'm not as skilled as you are, I'm sure, Wayne. So I'm
Oh,
gonna
no.
I'm gonna hand the host over to you, right? So the ultimately, right? So how I have to admit,
Yeah,
even
there's a,
but how do I do that again? I can't remember.
well,
Right.
you'll have a icon on your computer down at the bottom or at the top, and it says share screen.
Yeah. Okay.
So you give me the permission to share screen.
Okay. I see. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and then once I'm finished my presentation, I'll give it back so that you can have full control for getting people on with their camera images.
Okay. Great. All
Yeah.
right. Wonderful. Okay. All right. Good. So just so you know, we have people on our calls from throughout the South
Mm-hmm.
in virtually every state, in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina with Hassan getting on.
Right.
Some in other, mostly in those states, but we have them from other states as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma sometimes,
And you have the meeting,
Tennessee.
and you have it this time every so many weeks, like in the
We're doing
evening.
it. Well, we're doing it. We're doing it generally every other week,
Every other
every
week.
other Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been on this journey for how long?
Well, we just started at the end of last year, actually.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
stopped working on the UN decade primarily a little bit because we wanted to work on the Georgia election.
Yep. Understandable. Totally understandable.
Yeah, right. So, right. And we did well with that.
Yeah, indeed. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Mr. Crockett's still having problems with
I
the
know,
audio.
connecting to his audio.
Maybe you could send him a text. If he goes out and comes back in, he may get a better connection.
Yeah, okay. Let me call him on his, I'm gonna call him on his home. I'm gonna call him.
Yeah, no problem. Do I have time to go get a glass of water? Miss Gray, I'm going to just go get a glass of water. Oh, shoot. Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I think I'm finally ready now. So you said Hassan's roots are in,
I'm trying to get Hassan.
you said his roots are in Nova Scotia.
Hassan? Hassan. Hi, I know you're having trouble getting on. Oh, I can't get. Okay, I can see. Okay, you can't get the volume on, right? Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Hassan says he's coming on right now, he said, but I will see.
Wayn?
Yes, ma'am.
I love your name without the E, but you know that trips us up over here.
Yeah, I was saying that in my first department, when I worked with the government, there was another Wayne Hamilton. He was in the same division, but he's a tech specialist for education. And I would get all these technical emails that were really challenging for me. And people didn't believe that it wasn't me. I would say, I think you have the wrong individual. And they would say, stop fooling around, answer my question. So I finally met him one day, and he's white, I'm black. And so I said, we can't continue to have this confusion because I don't have time to respond to these folks. So I'll take my E off, and I got the IT folks to change it. So it's WAYN.Hamilton. And he still stays with Wayne Hamilton with an E.
Oh
And
my God.
honestly, that was at least 5 years ago, and I just do it automatically now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That
And
is interesting.
Wait, so here, so forgive me, here's Wendell as well, but here is Hassan. I want you guys to meet each other. Hassan?
I'm here. Can you hear
So
me?
yes, this is Wayne
Good
Hamilton.
evening. Well, Gloria, oh my goodness. Hey,
how are you, sir?
hey, Gloria.
Hi.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry.
Hi,
Hi,
Vernon.
hi, Hamilton. How are you? I'm
I'm doing
glad
fine.
meeting you. And I just haven't seen Gloria. Oh man.
Well, you
In
need to take
so
time.
many years.
You need
Oh,
to take time to
goodness.
connect.
Oh goodness, this is a wonderful surprise. Oh my goodness. Hey,
I am surprised as well. I didn't know you were going to be on at
I
all.
didn't know you would either. Oh my goodness, how are you? How's
I'm
everybody?
great. I'm doing well. Doing well.
Okay. Well, we'll catch up.
Well, we're going to catch up for
We'll
sure.
catch up. Okay. Oh wow. Thank you, Heather.
And
Well,
we,
so
we
I
have
want you-
witnesses to make sure that happens.
Yes, you got witnesses. Oh,
Hi,
that is so
Wendell.
cool.
Hello, how are you all?
Good,
Hi,
good.
Wendell.
Hi, Brother Hassan.
Good evening. Good evening.
How
How
you
are
doing?
you? I'm doing
I'm
fine.
doing
How are
just
you?
I'm doing fine. Glad you could join us.
Great,
And here's
great.
John
Yes.
Gifford. Good.
How's everybody else doing?
Good.
Hi,
Good.
Miss Gloria.
I'm great.
How
How
are
are
you,
you,
my dear?
Wendell?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
Wonderful.
Good.
Hi, Wendell. This is Vernon. How are you doing?
Hey, Vernon, how you doing, my brother?
I'm doing
Good.
great.
John. Hey, John. Oh my goodness. John, how are you?
It's like a
Oh,
family
wow.
reunion,
This
right?
is a family reunion. Hey, John. Oh gosh, that's been a while. Okay, cool. This is really good. So, and
we're-
just, you know,
We're gonna wait a little bit. There should be more people. Oh, here's Jerry. Hi, Jerry.
Hey, Heather.
Hi, good.
Hey, Jerry,
Yeah.
Wendell,
how you doing?
I'm doing good for an old
Good.
man.
I can't see everybody.
Doesn't get over clothes, Jerry.
I got some old ones, man.
Well, you over there at Tuskegee with all those fresh ideas, so man, shoot, that's
You
your
know,
least good.
it's good to have ideas, but just making them a reality. That's the problem.
That's always a problem, isn't it? I got to talk to the mayor over there, over in McCall, try to see can we, utilize a VA anymore. Well, we could kill two birds with one stone with that VA. You could help Tuskegee to regain some economic vitality, as well as you couldn't find a more perfect training ground to train the people down on the border to get them into skills, to get them into educational disciplines that they can go back home and make a living. Most of those folks don't want to come here, but they're
Nope.
looking for a way, but they just like the migratory birds. When the food run out, hey, got to go somewhere. So if we could teach them some skills that would allow them to stay at home, I bet you they would greatly appreciate that, as well as help with the problem that some folks see of overcrowding at our southern border. That's the only border that gets overcrowded.
Well, Wendell, they would have stayed home if corporation hadn't taken all the land, farmland, because they were farmers. They were farmers,
Wow.
and that's what they wanted to do. They were forced off the land.
Yeah.
Excuse me, John, you need to share that beer. I don't know what you thinking about. You, it looks like canola. I mean, what is it? I'm saying, listen to me, canola. I'm so.
Corona.
Corona. Thank you so much. I
It's a
got
Miller. It's a
COVID
Miller.
on my mind.
It's a
Oh, it's a
Miller.
Miller.
I'm
Okay.
tired.
All right. All right.
I've already put in my 12-hour shift.
Oh, well, okay. You deserve it.
Okay,
Can you all
so
see me?
Well,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we can't, Wilma.
You gotta keep your equipment working a little longer. I don't know what's happening here. Oh God. Well, let me see what.
We never see you, Wendell.
You never see me?
Uh-uh.
Well, you know, that lets you know that I am I'm
Consistent.
still on that I'm still on the HUAC committee list. So that may be it. I'll have to tell y'all about the time I visited the White House and the Capitol Police started running out there holding their guns. And Mary King and y'all will know Doris Dozier Crenshaw ran out there behind them. Ho, wait a minute, he's with us. You know, and I'm around there dumb enough. I didn't know what the world was going on. Goodness. They finally told me later on they were coming out there to make sure I didn't, I guess, do one of those January 6th things on them. So I decided then I won't be going back to visit the Capitol or visiting the White House anytime soon.
So
Oh
I
boy,
don't
well
know,
look,
we have 15 now,
okay,
folks
well,
on. I guess we could start.
okay, let's
Um,
get started. Good evening, everyone. I've lost you all
Good
now.
evening.
I'll get you back. Heather,
Yes,
why don't you go ahead until I can get back with you? And
are you having to get off?
no, I guess I'm okay. No, but I'm not.
You don't need to see us, Wilma.
Okay, all right. I could. All right, I noticed that Brother Hamilton is there, and
Oh, yes,
we're
he
glad to
is.
have him
He
here.
is. Wayne Hamilton, the
But
first one coming
let's
in.
begin. Okay, mighty fine. But let's begin with new people who are with us for the first time. Please give us a brief rundown on who you are, some of the work you've been involved in, are already doing, and let us just get to know you.
I don't know if we have new people on tonight, actually.
I'm new.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's right. You're not new to
I'm
us, but you're new to the group.
spanking brand new
So tell us about
baby,
yourself.
brand
Tell
new
us about
baby.
yourself.
My
Tell
name
us
is Hassan.
about yourself.
My name is Hassan Crockett, and currently I'm in Durham, North Carolina. Yes, I am associate professor at St. Augustine's University in Raleigh, North Carolina, and chair of the political science, social sciences department. So busy up here, of course. And I have been doing a lot of work locally. In fact, I think I told Heather, we've just put together I've been here maybe about third year, fourth year. I was out of the country, Heather, I was in South Africa for a while. And so we came back, and I've been here maybe about 3 or 4 years. And we just put together a research institute that I'm director of, and we're working with the community, we just did a paper with Black workers here. We just did a report for them. Now we're working with the Black, oh gosh, the name is eluding me right now. The Black Bloc is called Black Leadership Conference, working with them and community organizations and et cetera. So that kind of work, the kind of work that we did when we were in Morehouse and in Atlanta. So continue that work, loving it, loving working with students. I always have, always will, and been at HBCUs all my life. So that's pretty much it.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And your roots are?
Oh, my roots. And my, okay, my mother's Canadian, and she, my great grandmother, Carolina Quarles, escaped when she was 16 from the plantation in Missouri by herself. And she went all the way to Canada. She was the first passenger on a minister, his name eludes me right now, in Underground Railroad in Minnesota. And she married my great grandfather, who was a Watkins, and he too was a runaway. And they went to Windsor, and Canada, and all of my relatives on that side are in all over Canada. And there's a whole, my cousin established, there is a trail where the ex-slaves built communities in Ontario. And he's established a wonderful national recognized trail of ex-slaves and free people who put together communities. I remember Puce community. We were growing up, they had emancipation in Canada before we did, and there's a whole development over there of Black Canadians in Ontario who were members of the ex-slave communities, freemen communities. So that's my roots, and I have a lot of activity with them. We are very active even up to now with my relatives in Canada.
Wonderful.
So that's my ex-slave runaway, and Carolina Cross. She was 16 and she ran away. I mean, her father was a slave master, and the slave mistress, she was angry at her over something, and so she cut her hair off and whipped her, and she ran away by herself. So she was awesome. By herself, 16 years old, 16 or 17, going on 17. By herself.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? And went all the way to went all the way to Canada. Got all the way to Canada. From Missouri.
Wow.
Well, thank you for that, Brother Hassan. I noticed that you were kidding around with a whole lot of folks on there. Starting out, you want to tell how you know those? How you know those renegades?
All these renegades. I know. I have association and assimilation. All Heather, the Federation in Atlanta, John, Gloria. We worked with Gloria in her campaigns. Gloria over at Spelman. Gloria, we just did Gloria when she was a representative. Gloria, she was a representative. We worked with her there. We had a program at Morehouse where we had students. They were interns with the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. And Gloria helped us champion that. And we and then worked with the Federation, all these wonderful people. I'm just so happy to see. I had no idea. Heather didn't tell me. I thought it was just a couple of people. She didn't tell me that I was going to be graced with so many friends and so many associates that I haven't seen. So we did a lot of work in Atlanta and out of Morehouse. And so this is just a family reunion. I'm just so happy to see everybody.
Mighty fine.
Wonderful.
Others that may want to say a word relative to how they know Brother Crockett. Oh man.
Oh well, I want to say something briefly.
Okay.
And then we're going to hear from Wayn Hamilton. But so just so you all know, I might have mentioned, I know I've mentioned this to some of you, but my roots on my mother's side are also in Nova Scotia. So my ancestors on my mother's side came to Nova Scotia from Yorkshire, England in 1774. And and they fought with the British against the Americans during the Revolutionary War. I want to share that too. But so when I was working at the Federation, and Hassan and I were doing some research projects together, and when I knew he had his roots in Nova Scotia, I thought, what on earth is this? So I began to look more at the history of all of this. So Hassan, well, and a lot of the Black folks, and Wayn could go into this more in detail than I could certainly, but folks went up to Nova Scotia after both the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812, because many of the Africans fought with the British during those wars, and then they were sent up to Nova Scotia for their freedom. But anyway, Wayn, you could talk about that a little bit as well, right? Right, Wayn Hamilton? Yes. So anyway, I wanted to, I just, so Hassan and I have talked about this some, but never enough, never enough. So
Never know.
no, and we had one other person, an attorney, right, Jerry, who also had roots in Nova Scotia, worked with you, right? Maisha, right? Jerry Pennick? Oh, he's turned off his volume. But in any case, so there were a couple of folks working at the Federation whose roots were in Nova Scotia. So that's it for me, Wendell.
Okay. Well, Mr. Hamilton,
Yes, sir.
we're so happy that you would join us this evening, sir. We understand that you have been engaged in this UN decade struggle for quite some time, and we're just happy to know that you have done such good work, are engaged in such meaningful work. And as you can see kind of here from this group that we have gathered here, we come with a wealth of experience in cooperative development, in political organizing, in social movements, and what have you. And basically, we've been involved in work in the rural Southeast.
I'm in my UN decade meeting.
We thought
We
that
oughta, you need to mute yourself.
Oh, sorry, mom calling me. Sorry.
No problem.
so you can see that we're kind of a relaxed group here. We don't have a lot of pomp and circumstance engaged in this, but we are very serious about trying to do good work relative to this UN decade. And I don't think anything could point more succinctly to the work that we need to be engaged in, and the fact that I understand that over 43 states in the United States are in the process of enacting voter suppression legislation. Maybe some over 250 bills are being introduced. And I believe that our work with in the international community will do a lot toward helping us to fight this present fight that we are in, to keep folks from taking away our voting rights. The other thing is that we have to be vigilant to the point that we may need to call for I know this would be difficult, but it's needed that many more states, I won't say all of them, but many more states in the United States be included in the voting rights legislation that is being introduced. I don't know if you're familiar with the John Lewis Voting Rights
Yes.
Act. You're okay. Well, we can see that other states need to be included in that. It's basically the states of the Old South, that where you have the whole states under the provisions of the Voting Rights Act, and then communities of other states well, and out west as well as in the northeast, there are communities of those areas that are under the Voting Rights Act. But look like we need all of the state of Wisconsin, all of the state of Michigan added to that with what's going on now. So, but we just want you to know that we appreciate you coming and spending this time with us. And unless there are anything anyone else wants to say, we would want to bring you forward at this time, sir.
Can we ask everyone to turn off their mics, please, before Wayne starts?
Oh, okay. That's a
Good
good
idea.
idea. Very good idea. Thank you for that, Miss Gloria. Go ahead, Mr.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation or create some dialogue. And I'm looking at the screen, and in a lot of ways, I actually see my relatives.
Oh, wow.
So I feel I'm in a comfort zone, which will make it easy for me and not to be too nervous.
Mhm.
The reason why I have a little bit of nervousness is because I'm caring a lot about what I hope will be things that I could share with you that would be useful, that would make some sense. Because oftentimes there's opportunities to have dialogue or make connections, and you never really know whether or not you land it where you're supposed to land. So I'm going to try as hard as I can to be very much keeping in mind the informality of the group, but at the same time, knowing that you do have a bit of an agenda, a bit of an idea that you want to cultivate and grow under the umbrella of the Decade for People of African Descent. And recognizing that I'm up in Nova Scotia, we're in two geographical places that have political dynamics to it. We've got a lot of moving parts, but that doesn't mean that there can't be connections. The work that I do is within a government structure, and I would say 80% of that governance structure is made up of white Nova Scotians. And so I have a duty in my job to make sure that I not only create the opportunity for African Nova Scotians, because we use that over umbrella term for all those that have come, because we've been here since 1605. So it's incumbent upon me to make sure that when I talk about, quote, the community, that I'm not speaking as the only spokesperson, but rather I try to create spaces for those community voices to come into government because they perhaps hadn't been there before, or those voices or those opportunities were somewhat narrow. So I want to present a presentation, and I've pulled together what I think would be really important things to have as an understanding of African Nova Scotians, where we have come from and how we landed here, and then morph that into the work that I do at African Nova Scotian Affairs. We just call it ANSA. And then that will lead me into that last piece of this presentation around the decade. And I'll tell you now that even though we have this word in front of us called the decade, my office and my thinking and my strategy is to turn the decade into the legacy, because we will probably run out of time within wanting to accomplish a lot of things. But the intention is to try somehow, some way to turn all this work and not let it go to waste, but turn that into the legacy after 2025. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I first of all got to get Mrs. Gray to allow me to share her screen. And what you'd have to do, I'm viewing your screen, and you've got to pull down the at the top of your screen where it says share.
Right.
And then that'll allow me the opportunity to pull up my presentation.
So I think I've done that, but I don't know what else.
Yeah,
I
you
have.
did.
You can do
You
it.
did it before. So if you go back to the main screen that you had for the
Okay.
Zoom call in and of itself.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Now you have an icon either at the top or the bottom that'll talk about share screen.
Yeah.
So once you've done that, then it allows me to go in. So you have to, No, you have to disable your screen to allow me to enter. So where it's got shared screen, it should be, you got to give me permission. It's a little icon.
Share computer screen, video
Yeah.
clip, optimize.
No, it would be down maybe at the bottom where it's got share screen,
Yes,
and you have to allow me. So if
multiple
you,
participants. Yeah, okay.
yeah, take your time.
I think I've done, it says multiple participants can share simultaneously.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to open up my screen
Okay,
to see if you can tell me what you see on the screen right now.
You're
yes,
sharing.
good.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to take my camera off because that will hopefully enhance a bit of the delivery, because sometimes it's the voice or sometimes it's the audio that you really want to make sure that everybody's able to hear and see it really, really well. So just give me 1 second, please, so I can start this slideshow. So the item that you see on your screen says African Nova Scotian History and Connections. And because I work in government with a lot of people of European descent, I got to have some fun with them, but at the same time, I have to be at some level serious about the intention. And so I used a subtitle called Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, because I want my colleagues to understand that those, sorry?
You don't
I-
see your screen.
I think we can't see the screen. I'm sorry. So,
Oh, you can't see the screen?
no.
We see,
Heather, we
guess who's
see your
coming?
screen.
I see it.
I see it.
Okay,
See
good,
it.
good. All right,
I
good.
see it.
And I don't see it.
Okay, so Mrs. Gray, you have to make sure that all there's 17 participants on.
Right,
And I've got the screen up that has one slide that says African Nova Scotian History and Connections.
okay.
Do you happen to have that on your screen?
No, but let me see.
So down at the icon, when you look at the different tiles, there may be one where you have to enlarge it, because I'm now having the screen.
Okay. Okay, so somebody tell me, I'd like to just hand the host over to him, to you, actually Wayne, so you just do with it as you will. So how can I do that? Somebody tell me.
Hold on, I'm making sure that I can get everybody in. So there's a couple individuals that do not see the screen.
I still see Heather's screen,
Oh, okay.
the Zoom screen.
So Mrs. Gray, you've got two screens open.
Okay,
Yeah, and I wouldn't be able to help you on that one. You'd have to close out one of the screens that you have.
okay.
And usually those are those little icons.
I'm sorry, you all, I have no idea what to do here, so.
It's okay.
All right,
You're sharing your screen here, Heather.
I will stop the share. Okay, there we go.
There
Alright.
it is. I got it.
All right, good,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. It's all right. Because, we all got to get used to this technology. But I'll try to catch up to what I was wanting to get across, which was because I work for one part of my job with a predominantly colleagues of European descent, I'm trying to get them to understand the context around African Nova Scotians, where they came from and how they came to this place called Nova Scotia, because we did not come to Nova Scotia as settlers. We were settled. And there's a real powerful distinction between that terminology. So when I put the subtext in called Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, I'm trying to get them to be mindful of the fact that there are some people that were guests that came who not necessarily didn't come of their own volition. So I'm going to try to take you quickly on a journey. And some of these things that you're going to see on these slides, you already know, but I'm giving it in the context of leading up to the decade for people of African descent. So this next slide is all about that notion that people of African descent comes from that grand place called Africa. And my colleagues do not know the immensity of this place. They have no understanding of the breadth and scope that Africa has to offer. And so if I say to them, do you know that there's a penguin colony off the coast of South Africa? Did you know that you can go to Mount Kilimanjaro and you could find snow? They're amazed at not knowing about this place. So I feel it's my duty and sometimes a challenge to get them to understand the vastness of the place that we call Africa. And so I try to give them this particular context that says, United States of America, India, Western Europe, China, Argentina can fit into the continent of Africa, where my ancestors came from. So you need to understand that the diversity is there in all of its glory. But we as African Nova Scotians, you never should see us as a singularity. We are we are in so many ways driven by our storylines that come from all over this continent during the time of the enslavement period. Along the same lines of talking about the largeness of Africa is the fact that we were at the mercy of the colonial powers that did what they did to us. And it wasn't necessarily for the notion of being for conquest, for commerce, it was for conquest. And so most of the European countries took a shot at taking what they could out of Africa. And because of that, Africa in and of itself is now carrying a colonial legacy that here in Nova Scotia, we are still trying to come to grips with, because we have people in our province that are from the Francophone African countries, and they have a certain way of looking at the world. The English speakers have a certain way of looking at the world, likewise for the Portuguese. But all that to say that Africa went through upheaval, tragedy that should never befall any other set of people. But we were resilient because we came out of this place called Africa, and we made our way across the Atlantic Ocean to some of these places that were known as the British colonies. And as you know, that journey across the Atlantic was not easy. Some of our ancestors did not make it, and we have to honor their memory. But those that were able to survive because there's something special in that DNA. There's something special in the bloodline that allowed us to be able to put us through all that trial and tribulation, and we're still standing. So I wanted to give you a context between what you have for the United States of America. But if you cast your gaze up into the right-hand corner, you'll see the place called, quote, Nova Scotia. But before the Revolutionary War and the War of Independence, this whole swath of land was in the domain of the British. And they ruled it with a fairly strong hand because they wanted to expand their empire, as you know, to North America. They did the same thing for India. They did the same thing in parts of Asia. So the notion of conquest from the British was far and wide. But the reason I say to my colleagues, this slide is important because Nova Scotia has been at the crossroads of a lot of the journeys and stories of people of African descent that we need to have revelations and understand. So out of this coming to North America, not first to Nova Scotia, but what we would call the New World, that's where one of our stories begins. And our story begins with after the end of the war between the British and the Americans said to those British that wanted to be loyal, leave this place. And so if you want to leave this place, you have two choices. You can go to Upper Canada, and at that time, Ontario was seen to be what we would call Upper Canada, and Lower Canada, which was New Brunswick, another province, Prince Edward Island, and Nova Scotia. So some of the folks that were able to get to the fortified lines of the British were able to get there, and that's where the British decided to honor that pledge by giving them what they call safe passage from New York, was one of the loading places for the ships to bring people up to Nova Scotia. So up to Nova Scotia came the white loyalists who were of status in the British new old colonies. They would have been people of military rank, and they would have been people who probably had owned, and we do know this, they owned slaves. But as soon as they crossed the border, they flipped the script and called them indentured servants. But be that as it may, this piece of paper that you see on the screen was the piece of paper that allowed a person who was Black to get on board those ships to come to Nova Scotia. And this issue of a certificate allowed this person, Cato, who was a runaway, a Negro, he was reforted. In other words, he was able to make his way to the British lines. And that's because of the proclamation that was done by William Howe and Sir Henry Clinton that said if any Blacks or Negroes were able to make it to the British lines, they would honor them by allowing them permission to go to Nova Scotia or whatever else he may think is proper. And I want you to pay attention to the person who signed off on this. His name was Brigadier General Birch. The story goes that General Birch sat down with General Washington in a tavern in New York, and they were deciding what would stay, what would go. Obviously, the human cargo that were white were able to leave. And then it was a dialogue and a debate about all the other things under the guise of property that the Americans wanted to stay behind. And as the story goes, Brigadier General Birch said, no, those individuals that fought on our lines were going to be given safe passage. So here in Nova Scotia, there's a small place called Birchtown, and it's in honor of this Brigadier General who kept his promise to allow Blacks to come into Nova Scotia. So from 1783 onward, there's been the beginnings now of what I would call a settlement of Blacks in Nova Scotia. Those Black loyalists that came here were denied what they had been promised, and that was the notion of land. That was the opportunity to have opportunities for work. And as it was, as you can imagine, in an opening up of a new colony, a new frontier, you had to work from sun up to sundown in order to clear the trees, in order to get yourself crops, in order to build a house. But here in Nova Scotia, because we were still under the British Empire, you could not cut down a tree and think that you were going to be allowed to go forward with your building or your clearing of the land. Because every tree was the property of His Majesty's Navy. Because back then, all the ships of the British Navy were made out of wood. So the timber stocks here in Nova Scotia, you could not cut them down until they were surveyed, because some of these tree stock was designed and destined for the British Navy. So this slowed down people getting what we would call their land claims to their proper rightful ownership of land. Because unless you had your property surveyed, you were left to squat or left to be on somebody else's property that had already been cleared. So the Black laws become part of that root, part of that DNA about who we are as African Nova Scotians 200, 300 years ago. Fast forward to the Trelawney Maroons, who also came to Nova Scotia after the Black Loyalists. And that's, again, another story that connects the British with war. And as you know, the British also were trying to conquer most parts down in the Caribbean, and Jamaica was one of those places that they had under their control. But there were a lot of small encampments where you weren't able to enslave these individuals, and they ran up and they hid in the hills. And these particular individuals, there's a storyline that say they traced their ancestry back to Ghana. And one of these particular groups, called the Trelawney Maroons, were really notorious for staying together as a full regiment with wives and children, and also the regiment being following the proper lines as to who is in charge, who's the second in command. And because of time, I'll just compress the story down to say that the Maroons were from Trelawney, from the hills in Trelawney, were given a choice. They were either going to be sent off the island to another place with hard labor, or they were willing to send them up to Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotia received what we would call the Trelawney Maroons. There was about 700 to 800 of them. Again, guess who's coming to dinner? As a new colony trying to get itself established, you now have to deal with the Black Loyalists to get them settled. And you now have to deal with another group that's coming called the Trelawney Maroons. Where do you put them? How do you keep sure that they're going to be a stabilizing force and not a destabilizing force? And so the Maroons become, again, part of that interconnectedness between the Black Loyalists and the Maroons, who make up our storyline, who make up who we are as African Nova Scotians. So our bloodline has the Black Loyalists. Our bloodlines have the Trelawney Maroons. And then the last piece of our bloodline that would be historical in nature, going back a couple of centuries, would be the War of 1812 Black refugees. So again, into this province came another wave of those that came from the United States who were rooted here because they were displaced between the war between the British and the Americans. So we have in this province those three strands, the Black Loyalists, the Maroons, and the Black refugees. But in more contemporary times, and I would take us into the 1940s and 1950s, we had a whole wave of what we call the newcomers. And these individuals came up from the Caribbean, they come up from Louisiana, they come up from Mississippi. They were following the coal industry. And here in Nova Scotia, there was an opening up of a coal mine and a steel plant. And before you knew it, there was lots and lots of people that were not of Maroon descent or refugee descent or from Black Loyal descent, but rather what we call the newcomers who were coming into our province and who blended in well. And they blended in such a way that they are now part of this story of that narrative as who we are. And I would say since the 70s, there's been an influx of those from the African diaspora continent coming to make Nova Scotia the home. So I believe we have this rich mixture of what I would call the ultimate melting pot. And that ultimate melting pot allows us to be able to capture all this infusion of the Black Loyalist bloodline, the Trelawney Maroons, the War of 1812, Black refugees, the newcomers, and the recent African diasporians. They all gather under that one umbrella called African Nova Scotians. And we have documentation that proves that there was a Black person here as far back as 1605. So we have a long history. So when I talk to my European colleagues, I'm reminding them about the fact that you may have come off of a boat from Europe with your great-great-grandfather or great-great-grandmother, but we've been here long. And that needs to be respected because that history needs to be respected and understood. So that, again, is trying to now position where you are all and where I am to say that the only thing that stops us is this geographical boundary. But we have, I think, in our bloodlines, a lot of DNA that's similar, a lot of opportunities of having the same sets of experiences. And we need to use that as our strength and not see it as something that divides us. So here in Nova Scotia, we have what we could classify as about 48 to 50 various small communities that still call themselves of African Nova Scotian descent. So this particular slide tries to look at the province as a whole, and then it looks at the small little settlements that are here. And as it is probably in a lot of places in the United States, out of sight, out of mind. Most of these small settlements are on the periphery of an urban or a strong core town. And there used to be what we called the sunup laws. You could work in those towns and those cities, but by sundown, you better be back at where you're supposed to be in one of these small little communities. And all these communities have remnants of being a Black Loyalist group or a Black refugee group or a Maroon group or a newcomer group. And it's a challenge sometimes because you can always tell when the person utters their last name, which particular branch of the tree they're from. My last name is Hamilton. Automatically, people know that I'm from Beatrill. Automatically, they knew that I've got roots down in Shelburne as part of the Black Loyalists, but also the refugees. So we've got this really rich tapestry that the Office of African and Social Affairs is constantly trying to promote. And each side, inside of each one of these communities, you would have small organizations. You would have probably an old one-room schoolhouse that converted into a community center. And you would have a lot of volunteer effort with these communities trying to stay alive. For these small communities without any effort from government for the most part, still trying to be the narrative and still try to offer something to their communities. So my job is to make sure that I can tie these two pieces together. Government services, being able to deliver it in a respectful, culturally appropriate way, and then the community being able to articulate what it is that they expect of government. So the Office of African and Social Affairs is where I do my heavy lifting. I've been there since the beginning, which was about maybe 15 years ago, when I was asked to write what the design of this office would look like. So I was given a free pen to try to craft what I thought was going to be the best opportunities for African Nova Scotians to have some kind of a structure inside a government institution. So we came up with this notion that's saying that ANSA is a vital link that connects government and the African Nova Scotia community. That's the mantra that I preach to my staff every day. That's the calling card that we say to the community. And when we are able to get to this point where we create the right kind of relationship, then government shows up differently. It's about government working with us, for us, but not about us. We have what we call a vision statement and a mission statement. And this is trying to make sure that we signal that government has done a few things that were appropriate, or government has done a few things that the community has looked at as being good, but that's not enough. We got to build on that. And we do believe that our mission is to support, assist, and enhance those kinds of things that government is doing for delivery of the services to African Nova Scotians and be a partner. If I have to call out the notion of it being a racist initiative, I will. But for the most part, I start off by saying, if I do not see the equitable delivery of the service, then we've got a problem, let's resolve it. And sometimes those problems that I see are in the practice or in the policy that's inherently wrong. And it takes some time to get people to see the light. And if they can see the light, then I don't have to verbally abuse them. But sometimes they don't see the light, and then I have to use a certain kind of armament that talks about a racist attitude, that talks about still a colonial mentality. But I reserve that because I do think that there's good in everybody, and they just got to be able to see in their heart when they're doing something wrong. So sometimes the heart leads the mind. When we're in the community, it means that the community now can see, as it relates to working with government, we give voice in issues. And we give it from the point of view of saying that it is real. It's not something that is just been because the community is saying it without the factual evidence. We're always providing what we can, the right kind of data, the right kind of analysis. And government is not used to working, I think, with marginalized groups. So we've been seen as the best way forward, not only for African Nova Scotians, but I could say with other marginalized groups, because people are understanding how we create those relationships first, and we stay true to those relationships with the community. And oftentimes we have to give validation and respect to our concerns, because sometimes government can be very dismissive. Oh, it's not as bad as you think. Or, well, we're going to get there, but we're not going to get there today. We'll take it under advisement. That time is gone. It's past tense. So you need to give, that is government, this notion of respect and validation to what's being said. And that open dialogue is a space for the community and the government to sit and see that there is a synergy that can come about for a notion of betterment. And I can tell you that I speak truth to power a lot, because I can say to my government colleagues that are my bosses or that I work for, if I don't feel that it's genuine, I don't mind putting the pen and walking away, because that to me is a signal that you're just doing this as window dressing. And I'm not to be seen as anybody's poster boy. I want to get on with doing this work. And as a public service, we've got to do a better job with our communities. So let me get on with it. So we do have a strategic plan. It's been the one that we go back to every now and then, but it was built on all the things that have gone on historically and contemporary about things that were wanted from this community. There are a number of profiles that we did on the African Nova Scotia communities and what their needs were. And then, as you know, in government, you write a report, it sits on a shelf. So we pulled down every report that we could lay our hands on when we were building the office, and tried to look to see what were the promises that were broken, what were the promises that were kept, and allow that to be part of this guide that allows us to come fully to say that this is the best opportunity for an office to meet its goals and its targets. All my blah, blah, blah that I'm doing is not without challenges. So working across government departments is hard, because departments tend to stay in one silo and they don't see integration across government. And that's what you have to do if you're talking about marginalized groups. You can't send mom to community services and then not have a conversation with people in education because of her children, or to be able to talk to mom and dad about making sure that father and mother are employed or on some level of getting more academic achievement. You've got to be able to have that opportunity to collaborate across government departments in order to deliver the services, because it has to be human-centered. Don't protect the policy, don't protect the system. You're there as the public service in my job to make sure that it's much more human-focused and not just trying to support the system. And then you work across different communities. That's a challenge. Trying to get more databases of information. That's always been a challenge. And then consensus onto discourse. Let's decide how we're going to have this dialogue to make it respectful. Because oftentimes government thinks it knows what it's doing and it already has a playbook in mind. And I sometimes have to tell them that's not going to work for the community. It will not work. Take that away. Come to the community meeting and just come with a paper and pen and listen. So it's been a lot of challenges over the years, but we're still standing, we're still connected. There's a government reality with human resources and funding and an engagement strategy. I live with that. Then on the community side, as it is when I'm sure with this group, we live by support with volunteers. If you want to talk to the community, it's after 5 or the weekends. Don't think that you're going to set up a meeting at 10 o'clock with government officials in the community, because chances are, one, the people that should be there are probably out working, or two, that's being disrespectful and not understanding that the community's needs come first, to put food on the table, to make sure those children get to school. So if you want to come and have a community meeting, you do it when we're also available. So I've been trying to do those kinds of things to get government to understand the community's reality. And sometimes I'm really successful. Other times I'm kind of like still knocking at the door of their brain. I'm not going to get into this because I think it's more important to spend the rest of the time talking about the DPAD and the action plan. And that brings me up to this picture to help me do this transition. Mrs. Clayton is a basket maker. She passed away in our community back in the 1980s. And the story goes that her ancestry ties her to South Carolina, as well as the kind of baskets that she make are sometimes found in places like Sierra Leone. And we never ever had the opportunity, I think, in our community to appreciate Mrs. Clayton and her baskets. And it's only now that people are recognizing not only the artistry of what she did, not only the practicality of what she did, but the fact that it was something that she had learned from her mom, from her grandmother. And that lineage goes all the way back. So if you take out the Atlantic Ocean, there's still remnants of how cultural ways of doing were able to survive across the transatlantic, which to me is an exciting opportunity for more research about what are the cultural traits that survived off of that migration from the continent of Africa to North America. So here's what we do for our decade for people of African descent. If you think you're too small to make a difference, you haven't spent a night with a mosquito. Nova Scotia is only a province in the whole of the country. Canada is the signature to the United Nations, not Nova Scotia. But we have risen above the country by declaring that we want to take ownership of the Decade for People of African Descent action plan for this province. So in 2014, I started to go on this journey of understanding as much as I could about how we could position my office and the government in a position to really, really use this as a flagship, as a launching pad, to really put the spotlight to amplify all the things that had been talked about with the notion of having a 10-year opportunity for all member states of the United Nations to pay attention to our needs. So a couple of years ago, we actually launched what we would call the Action Plan for Nova Scotia. We're the only government jurisdiction, and I'll say this and I'll stand on it, in North America that actually has an action plan around the Decade for People of African Descent. member state governments and some individuals have did a declaration, they've done an announcement, but I've yet to see anybody have a full-blown action plan about how they're gonna take what the United Nations calls for as words that are aspirational, but turn them into actual tangible things to do. So this picture shows the gentleman on the left side, who is the Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs. He's the only person of, he's the only African Nova Scotian in the government of the day here in Nova Scotia. And what he's signing is a declaration of commitment. The person in the middle is the premier of the province, who came from a family of 11 children, who understood really quickly when he became the governor or the premier of the province, that things have to change in this province, not only for people who are marginalized, but especially for people of African descent, because he grew up in a community that really was multiracial, multicultural. So it was the premier who gave the impetus and gave a lot of the push for what we were trying to do, because it meant it was all of government signing off on this, not just African Nova Scotian Affairs. And the one who's on the far right, she at the time of the writing is the Deputy Commissioner for the United Nations Human Rights Commission out of Geneva. She's been following our journey because we were constantly trying to be in play with what the larger conversations were. So when we told her that we were having this pronouncement, that it was going to be actually an action plan, she said, "What can I do to help?" And we said, "If you could come over, that would really be great, because it will show that we are serious about this." And sure enough, she showed up and she spent 3 days with us. She's no longer in that position. She's retired out, but her name is Kate Gilmore, and she has a really wonderful down-to-earth personality. Her home country is Australia, and she's been involved in human rights for most of her career. But this document that I'm talking about, called The Decade for People of African Descent, is really all about trying to get ourselves rooted in three things: development as a large pillar. The other one that we locate ourselves in is called justice, but we're broadening that to be social justice. And the third pillar that we're doing is development. So recognition, justice, and development are the three pillars that United Nations is making the call to all of its member states. And because of the time, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen to allow me to go back to where everybody is and try, if we could, to open up and have a bit of a dialogue, recognizing that I'm never too far away for another conversation. And what I'd like to do, with your permission, I'd like to send you the document, because it's in an e-format, for you to take a look at it to see if there are ways that there could be some kind of collaborations where ANSA could potentially be a conduit to some of the civil society groups that are trying to champion different elements within the action plan here in Nova Scotia. And I'm sorry if I went too fast. I'm sorry if I left out some things, but again, I just want to set the context around future conversations by giving you a bit of the background about who we are as African Nova Scotians, a little bit of the work that we do at the office, and then that back end being about the Decade for People of African Descent, and how I think a conversation could ensue with whatever time is left over, knowing that the next time it would be part 2. And I'm going to stop talking because I sometimes talk too much.
Well,
For questions or comments.
Wow.
question or comments, you all.
First of all, Wayne, that was a phenomenal presentation. Thank you so
No
much
doubt.
for that. Let's applaud that presentation.
Wonderful.
That was awesome. Absolutely wonderful. I look forward to getting the PDF of the presentation, because it's amazing that you're the only entity that has actually done a plan
Right.
for implementing whatever aspects that the 3 aspects or whatever that you're going to do. that is unreal. And hopefully our group could begin to figure out how we could work with you to do a similar thing for Southeastern United States. And something that we can do like fairly quickly, because you got a model. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I would love to be able to talk with you more about how we might work together to implement a similar plan for Southeastern United States.
And as long as we're both agreeing that we try to position and pivot, because the decade's going to come to an end, but we've got to pivot strategically to say the work continues. So let it be decade, but then it's the legacy of the decade. Because some of this work, as you guys know, it's going to take us a while.
Absolutely. And the other thing I wanted to say, the South Carolina connection, I'm from South Carolina. Okay. Those were sweetgrass baskets that I'm about to cry right now. Those were sweetgrass baskets that she was weaving. And that's a part of our heritage on the coast of South Carolina, Gullah Geechee culture. I mean, that's one of the things that we retain from Africa. In addition to, I discovered as a young girl that when my mother used to wrap my hair with cords, I didn't know that that was a West African thing until I was an adult, when I saw my sister-in-law, who's Nigerian, had cord wrapped around her hair. So this is wonderful. And I'm not going to dominate the conversation, but I look forward to working with you. There's a lot that we can do together. Excellent presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm on a Zoom call. Let me call you right. Okay. All right.
Tricia, I would like to.
So Brother Hamilton, I too echo what Gloria said. That was excellent presentation. I like to get that history. And I too would love to get your strategy, that piece of paper together so we can create our own plan. When you said, I'm interested in what development you're talking about. Is that land development? Is that community development? What kind of land? I'm also interested in, I'll get this out so I won't forget it. When you said justice, you said social justice, and I'm also interested in financial justice. So social, political, and financial is the three areas I'm personally interested in. So if you could speak on those two things, I'd appreciate it.
And I'll be really quick. With the United Nations decided on those three pillars, development, justice, and recognition, that was after 10 years talking to the member states about what would get past the General Assembly. Because remember, the United Nations has to have everybody agree. So every word, every phrase has to be vetted. And that's what took them so long to agree that this is the document that they wanted to adopt. So here in Nova Scotia,
someone needs to mute.
Man, oh man, taking a challenge as a matchup.
Hank Sanders. I think it's Hank.
Oh.
So here in Nova Scotia, when we talk about development, we've imagined the word development, but then we have some activities underneath that. And one of them has to do with health and trying to do a better job for the health determinants. So we are working with some community groups and the Department of Health to think about imagining data collection, because we don't do that here based on race. Talk about trying to support health education more as a way to make our communities healthier. There's some things that are happening in employment where we can try to pinpoint what we need for the younger generation for skill development, but as well as academic learning going further. So we've taken the word development and we've blown it out so the other departments that I work with in government can see themselves reflected. And for justice, we've expanded it not to be just the criminal justice system, but that whole realm around social justice, to your point around housing, economic justice. All those elements play in that space called justice. So that allows me then to reach out not only to community services, which is one department, around what are they planning to do in one of those fields, also the Department of Justice, but also the Department of the Environment, because we know that there's racism as relates to the environment when they think about where they put certain kinds of locations. So there's lots of room for government to find their way in terms of the departments. And then there's lots of room for the community to raise their hand and say, I'd like to get connected to that piece because that resonates with my community or my organization. So I think there's lots of opportunities to start to connect the dots so that you really can have the opportunity to say, which lane do you want to be connected to? Because there's quite a bit that I think we can try to strategize about. Make sense?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so awesome. I think, Gloria, you had an excellent approach of the Southeast, the USA, and the 3 pillars: recognition, justice, and development, and looking at the Southeast, recognition of the African diaspora in the Southeast.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. And I think it's up in 2024 as far as the timeline. And then again, I like the idea that it continues to make a declaration of continuance. But what the Southeast looks like as far as recognition, the diaspora of the Southeast, what we're talking about with justice, and we can do a lot of, all these terms are just pregnant with so many parts of our lives and so many parts of what's happening. And we can select some. I think you can have an overview, have a document that gives an overview, and then look at a timeline where each area can be approached by different segments within the Southeast. I'm thinking about the HBCUs and the role that they would have in this, and the community organizations, and et cetera. So to develop a document that can be looked at as the Southeast in development and et cetera. So I really like what you put on the table, Gloria, and again to Hamilton. That's just the fact, because I was looking at the United States and they're not doing anything here. I mean, there's a little bit that is happening. In 2015, the UN, they have a piece, and I was just doing some little research, International Day of Remembrance of Victims of Slavery. Yeah. And then another piece, Haitian American, they had a piece.
Yep.
And that's it. I mean, as far as the decade. So go ahead, Hamilton, you had something.
Mr. Crockett, one of the things I think would be really important to think about strategically is providing the leadership to create coalitions or networks.
Right.
Because where you guys are positioned, you've got a lot of tentacles, a lot of connections across that whole of the region. So you won't be able to do all the lifting yourself. But there may be a way to have the leadership that this group has to invite people in for networks, for coalitions, so that people will feel that they're part of this and not looking to say, well, why are you guys doing that? I'm not at the table, so therefore it's going to fail. We've got to get over that hurdle and say, no, we just create the space for people to come together, to strategize, to get networks up, to get coalitions up, so that everybody can see that we build together on this as opposed to just one group. And then you get a lot of that infighting. So I found to say to my community, create networks and coalitions, and then use that as the leverage point, as opposed to one organization has to be all to everything. It won't work.
I was rereading Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. And one of the things he talked about in terms of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, that they had 85 affiliated organizations across the South, right? 85 affiliated organizations across the South. That's why they were so effective. in what they were doing, right?
Mhm.
And of course, you're going to have challenges and disagreements and in a dissent and all that, but
Yeah.
that collaboration and coalition building is
Yeah.
critical to the success of anything that we do.
Mhm.
So yes, and the
Exactly.
historically Black colleges and universities, the majority of them are in the South.
In the South.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've got a wealth of resources,
Mhm.
you know, right where we are.
Mhm. I think some type of conference that will pull people together, around the theme. I think that would be an excellent idea, and to get together. There's a book out called Change, and it talks about the physics of movement. And when you get a critical mass, there's a certain number of folks. That's why that 85 number of SCLC is so critical, because that allowed for them to do what they do, because there was enough people involved, enough organizations involved. Anyway, but I think, this sponsor a conference, and pull together a Southeastern conference on the UN decade, and and put together these themes and have people involved, and then put together a whole coalition, do the coalition work, and the tentacles are there. Excellent, beautiful.
This is Patricia. I wanted to thank you for your presentation. Somehow I kept dropping, but I look forward to getting the PDF so I can see the entire presentation. I guess 2 points I wanted to make. First, the UN decade out of the Human Rights Council. Human Rights Council is meeting on the 22nd. They just had an event on the 5th. And then on the 22nd on environmental justice. No, the 24th. The 22nd is the day in which we have the last day to submit to speak on that, a 3 to 4 minute presentation on that issue. So, with Queen Mother, Dr. Deloise Blakely, and the ECOSOC of the UN, we could submit something. The Commission on the Status of Women is coming up, and March 11. I think I sent that out to everyone. It's very extensive. There's over 700 side events and parallel events that people can network with, because we will not be coming to New York this year as women. Also, what I wanted to find out from you, is that when I've gone to the UN, I've seen that Canada has had some presentations with some of, I know a few years ago, there was Canada at the Commission on the Status of Women supported the Indigenous women who are First Nation women who were being incarcerated at a high rate. So I'd like to know and maybe get more clarification from you on what is your relationship with the government, because it seems as if the government is supporting what you're doing. And when others will say, okay, well, why aren't we doing anything? It's because we don't have people within our government that supports. We have people and Black people who, are a part, who could support and encourage the coalition to actually get into the decade, which we are, quickly running out of. But what is your relationship with the government? Thank you.
Yeah. So Canada is a federation of individual provinces, and each one of these provinces is political entity of itself away from Ottawa. So in the province of Nova Scotia, it's the provincial government that is endorsed, give resources, and is allowing the office to play the leadership role for the Decade for People of African Descent Action Plan. The province of Nova Scotia, though, has relationships with the federal government in Ottawa, and we have had opportunities to talk to the feds about this thing called the Decade, and they have taken leadership on some pieces of the Decade by infusion of cash into civil society groups. But each individual province have not come together as a collective and said, this is what we are going to do from a provincial level, or in your guys' case, the state level. They're relying that to be individually opportune, providing only opportunity at the provincial level. So we're lucky because this province is way far ahead of what's happening in Ontario, way far ahead what's happening in Quebec, and even all the way to British Columbia. The challenge around working within government, though, is that they have these really strict rules as to when are you civil society and when are you government. But the beauty of our plan is that it's a combination of both, because you can't advance this work unless there's an African problem. 3 stones cook the pot. So you need civil society, you need government, and then you need Joe Q public, business and otherwise, to see this plan is not only going to have an effect for African Nova Scotians, but it affects every citizen in this province. And so that's how we've angled this within government. And that's why I think they've given us support with resources, with connections. I'm the only office that has a standing committee of other office holders who are not political, they're senior bureaucrats. They are the ones that are next to the ministers in this province who gather as a table. And we call it the African Nova Scotia table. There's no other province that has this office. We're the only province that has an office dedicated solely to people of African descent. So I think we're in a really strong position provincially to carry this on even beyond what I would say would be the end of the decade. And that relationship, I think, with the federal government is always tenuous because, as you know, governments come and go. But this plan, because it's connected to so many departments, they're not going to let it go because it would be suicide for them to not say to their constituents that are Black, oh, we're done. The decade's over, so we've got to always. That ain't going to happen. So I'm probably not able to answer your question, Patricia, in its entirety, but we do have a relationship in government because I am a government office. But I'm trying to change the dynamic of what a government should do with its citizens. I'm trying to push towards human-centered approach and not protect the policy that's there and nobody knows why.
So let me just clarify. There is a government office of Afro-Nova Scotian Affairs when you say that, or is that a
yeah, it's as if it's a department within a government structure. So you have Department of Justice, you have Department of Education. So those particular departments here in Nova Scotia, they have a governance structure where they have to do what they are supposed to do because they're led by a political person who got elected. But the senior civil servants who I connect to, we are part of government, fully fledged. All my staff, they got government IDs. The offices that we have, they're all government offices. But the uniqueness is that we have a different relationship with this population called African Nova Scotians.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other comments or questions to Brother Hamilton?
Ooh, I like that, brother.
Yeah, I have a question. What happens when there's an election and you have new leadership? What happens with the effort that you? Yeah.
Yeah, it still stands. It still stays. It still trudges on. So if there's a change in election or a change in government, usually they don't dismantle the Department of Education or the Department of Justice. You just get a new set of senior bureaucrats to run the shop, let's say. So ANSA, African Nova Scotian Affairs, we've survived 3 different government changes in government. And they wouldn't really try to tamper or tinker with this notion of support to the African Nova Scotia community, because it really would be for any party what we would call political suicide. This province has stood up an office for Aboriginal affairs. They've stood up an office that deals with the Francophone or French-speaking Acadians in this province. And with African Nova Scotia Affairs coming along, we play a really strategic role because we cut across every one of those departments. So we know that there's going to be election, let's say in Nova Scotia by September 2021. Whether or not the current government is able to survive that call, we don't know. But I can tell you, ANSA will still be around. My staff will still be there. The action plan is not going anywhere. And like I said, I've already started to strategize around changing the language to get it in people's brains that it ain't over. We've got to morph this into a legacy because it's going to take that amount of time. So I think we're in pretty good shape to withstand any of the shocks at a provincial or even at a federal level, that what we've got, it's going to survive.
Wayne, can you give us a little bit about some demographics about Nova Scotia? How
Yeah.
big is it?
Yeah.
The population? I just don't have
Sure.
a sense of the
Yeah.
size. I know it's a small.
Yeah.
Give me some sense.
Yeah. So the number of Blacks that are in this province, we tap out at around 22,000.
Mm-hmm.
The whole population in of itself is around 100,000. We're not up to a million. It's of European descent in terms of part of its ancestry, but that part of the population is fairly old. So demographically, the people of European descent, 60% of the population is over the age of 50.
Yeah.
In the African Nova Scotia community, where we've got around 20,000, our population really taps out with the bubble being from 7 out to 35. We've got about 60% of our population that's in that range.
Man.
And that's a shocker because,
is.
as you know, people are talking about aging population. So we say to government, we're not aging. The original people or the Indian people out of here are in the same category. We're not aging as fast as the European population. So we're already saying to government, you need to start thinking about that for your long range planning. Because if you don't take into account that now, you're going to have a problem even further out.
Yes.
We have a beginning of an immigration flux or an infusion for people that are coming to this province. And it's based on that earliest stat that I told you about the older European population tapping out. So where's the tax base going to come from? Who's going to be doing those other kind of jobs that we can't rely on anybody to do them? We don't have enough plumbers. We don't have enough electricians because those people in those fields are aging out. They're retiring out. So there's been a push to get folks from the Asian subcontinent here. There's been a push to get folks that are from some countries in the Middle East here. And then I raise my hand and say, what about Africa? What about the Caribbean? And then I get this delicate dance. Oh, well, we're looking at a certain kind of demographic based on what we already got as old established relationships with the European Union and with the Japanese. And I'm saying, yeah, I don't want to hear that nonsense. If you're talking about making this province move into the 21st century, you've got to have a global look at what should be the population and not hide under the old ways of doing relationship building with immigration. So I'm not saying that we've hit the target, but we are pounding on that door because we think that it's important that they be much more multiracial in their thinking for the population that they need to support it. But we are in trouble in some of those categories because the European population is aging out. And again, we never had chances before to get involved in some of the technologies or to get in some of those trades. And so now all of a sudden, I keep telling people the biggest pain right now or the biggest syndrome is I need to find a Black person. And I would say, well, where were you 10 years ago when we were trying to open up these doors? And so it's really a slow catch up. And that becomes my frustration because they're going after this. I need a Black person for this job. I need a Black person for this job. And they look to our office to try to be the interloper. And I say, no, because it's not genuine. What work have you done to make that workplace able to know that a person coming in is going to feel safe, they're going to feel like they're wanted. Just say that you want to have a person who's Black because you want to make the numbers. I can't go that route. That's not what I'm all about. So I've told employers, unless you're in for the long haul, don't call me. Don't call me. But if you've got a plan that talks about succession planning, that talks about managerial opportunities, that talks about 5 or 10 years about what you want to do with Blacks in this province to get them embedded in your community, yeah, I'll take your call. But don't say, oh, we got this little project and we're looking to hire a Black person. Sorry, I can't help you.
Why is the European population aging out?
It's because they never really, they're insular. They had very strict immigration rules back in as far back as the 60s as to what was going to be and who would be able to make themselves come here. And sorry, that's my phone because I'm still connected to work. Sorry. But they also were not having large families. They got into that 1.2 or whatever that number was, and they kind of like got stuck there. But the African Nova Scotia communities were known to have more than 2 or 3 people in our family as the main nuclear family. So people have said that they think that the population here aged out quickly because they really weren't thinking about expanding in and of themselves. And the young European population that was here, they went to greener pastures, Toronto. They went to greener pastures, go back to and get jobs that are going to be out in British Columbia. So there was a time there really were a lot of people that were exiting out of Nova Scotia because the extraction of the product was already done. Fish and lumber and coal and those kind of things were extraction opportunities. And once that dried up, then it meant that people had to go someplace else to get their work if they had the means. And a lot of African Nova Scotians didn't have those kinds of means. But that's okay, because it's still a nice place. We have really good lobster.
This is Patricia. Did you, Mr. Hamilton, did you find out?
Tell me, Wayne, please.
Why? Okay, I'm sorry. Did you find out about the decade yourself or your group, peer group, and you all engaged, or did the government find out about it or knew about it? Well, Canada is a member state. Did the government initiate it? So which came first, the chicken or that egg? Well, you know what I'm saying.
Actually, we came first because I worked in West Africa for a number of years. And when I came back to Nova Scotia, I did it on purpose. I built the work of ANSA around local, national, and international. So I built that as part of our mandate. So I knew eventually, and we have gone that journey into the United States and across Canada to make connections in different kinds of ways. So we're seen as a consultant to, an advisor for national and international issues as it relates to African Nova Scotians. So that was one platform that I built inside of ANSA in terms of its structure. And because I've already had some international connections and relations, I was constantly getting information about what was happening within the UN family, from what was going on with UNICEF, what was going on with humanitarian efforts for FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, as well as the folks over in Geneva who take care of all the things that came out of the Durban report. So I was in a really good position to be watching the story as it was trying to unfold. And no offense, but one of the challenges has been with the decade has been some of the larger powers within the United Nations putting up roadblocks because at some point in time, reparations has crept in to some of these conversations. And just like it has been for France and for Britain, the United States also doesn't have a level of comfort with that being on the agenda. But recognize that at the United Nations, it's one country, one vote. So the United States with the General Assembly only gets one vote. So does Trinidad. Ghana gets one vote, so does Britain. So the strategy was bring the decade to the General Assembly. We're going to be able to have much more traction there as opposed to carving it out to the other agencies. And that's what they did. So I was following this story since 2014. And then when I felt that it was about the launch, that's when I started to prep my minister and started to prep my other colleagues about this is an opportunity for us. We've got to take care of this. Because remember, there was actually an international year for people of African descent. They gave us a year, but those committees said, no, you can't give us a year. This stuff is way more than a year. So they went back to the drawing board and started to work on the decade. So we were really well positioned when we dropped a hammer and said we wanted to have a working group to have an action plan developed and presented to the powers that be, those political folks in government. I'm not an elected official. They could decide to pull the plug on me tomorrow, but answer will still survive because I think it's that entrenched. And so the decade document that they're going to send you, it started out with being over 150 pages, but we knew for government, you got to give them something that's bite size. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we only gave them what I thought was things that connected to other departments, so they could never ever see this as only being just ANSA carrying it. No. All of government has to carry this plan, not just ANSA. We can be the lead, we can facilitate, but we own this as a collective. We do not own this entirely by ourselves. So that's how we put the strategy in play. And I guess it was, I'd rather be the chicken than the egg, I guess. So we first.
Can you replicate this in some of the other provinces?
But in order to do that, somebody in those provinces has to be willing to prepare to take it on. We are happy to share, we're happy to strategize, but you need to get that connectedness between government to sign on to say they want to endorse the plan and work with civil society so that you get this kind of a blending opportunity that could be a match. I don't understand why the government of Ontario doesn't have a plan, because they got way more Black folk than we have down here. And I don't understand, other than what the federal government did out of Ottawa, to have a national pan-Canadian plan. But because of the political this and political that, I think they realize that they don't have the fortitude. They don't have the courage to take this on from a pan-Canadian. Because as you can imagine, just as in the United States, how do you go about getting people to have a conversation and a dialogue? It would take even 5 years to get people to probably agree to something up here, because everybody's got their own little narrative about we should do it this way, we should do it that way. But the beauty here in Nova Scotia is that we fused those storylines that I told you about, the Black loyalists, the Black refugees, so that everybody's singing from the same hymn book. So I say to my colleagues, we've got to stay true to that. We've got to always be willing to uplift all of those stories, but blend it. We can't have one being better than the other. So yes, the Black loyalists came, so did the Maroons. They all contributed. We can't afford to say one contributed more than any other. But up in Ontario, you'll get the story about, oh, those that are there from the Caribbean, they're the ones that laid the foundational roots for the economics of what's going on. Others will say it was the Underground Railroad. Those are the first communities. They should be at the front of the line. Oh, no, we have to have those that are here from the continent that have been there for 5 or 6 generations. So Ontario has a lot of different narratives, and it's difficult with a government to try to figure out which voice to listen to. But here it's a little bit easier because we fused all those voices under that one umbrella of African descent or African Nova Scotia descent, and it is holding up well. We actually have on the flag that we've endorsed, which is now we're hoping there will be something that will become a standard convention for the community, because we don't have a lot of symbols and icons that we could say, that's us. That's another thing around, you talk about recognition for where you guys are in the United States. There's got to be a way that we don't wait for the state or the federal government to give us a plaque that we think is historical. If it's historical, we do it ourselves. And we did that in some communities that have the place where we used to get baptized in a lake or in a river. And so when I first got into the office, I was asking my community members, what's most important to you in terms of significance? What's a site of significance? And they would tell me something, and I'd say, well, how come you guys don't put a sign up or something? And they'd say the same thing. Oh, we're not allowed because it's the government that gives us a historical plaque. And I would be very respectful to my elders. And I would say, no, don't wait for government to plaque what you think is of significance. Do it yourself. And there's one group, I know it's late, but I got to tell you the story. I have a lot of aunties, and they like drinking tea, really strong tea with only a little bit of sugar. And I had to go to this small community to talk about sites of significance as part of our recognition. And I sat down and must have had about 6 cups of tea. And so finally I asked them, Auntie, when you were baptized, where was that? And she gave me the story where they got baptized. And she also told me they had to spend 5 days out in the bush to make sure that they were of God. And that was back in the day. But she said that getting baptized in the lake, she misses that. And she wished that had been for her godson. And so I said, do you know where the lake is? She said, yeah, but now it's this, it's that. I said, do you know where, if your godson knows where it is? He said, no, he would know. And I said, but that's what we've got to make sure that your grandson knows where that was. That's a site of significance. So at the end of that 7th cup of tea, they all agreed that they would go back to the church, to the lay council, and say, there's got to be a sign that says where the church used to have the baptisms. Now they have it inside the church because they have the indoor thingy. But the idea is that don't lose sight of that memory about how and what we were before all this technology and stuff. So to the point that I think you guys may be able to be in a position to say, don't wait for government to plaque us around what we are doing here in this part of the United States. That's our story. We will figure out ways that we want to be able to recognize it. And again, I got to stop talking.
Awesome.
No, you don't.
Yeah, awesome. Look, I got to drop off. You have the emails, Heather?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I have.
Wayn, this is just, I am just
It's been
so
wonderful.
happy to meet you. And then I am so looking forward to us working together. Gloria, I am just thrilled to see you. We will talk. This is just a total surprise. Heather, but yeah, I got to drop off. I got
All right.
something.
Thank you.
But thank you so
I
much,
have
everybody.
one-
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Seeing everybody again. This has
Thank
just
you.
been awesome. Yes. Bye,
I
everybody.
have
Thanks so much.
one little question for Mr.
Yes, sir.
Hamilton. I really appreciated your presentation. I worked for many years with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. and with
Okay.
Cooperatives in the Southeast.
Yes.
And I knew of Nova Scotia for 2 things. One, the Underground Railroad, and the other is the school and Antigonish.
Cody,
Which
the
is,
Cody Institute.
yes.
Yes.
So you are in connection with them because we've sent people from the Federation to the Institute.
Well, I can send that information along with the action plan because the Cody still stands. It's still doing what it can to support the cooperative movement. And there's one other entity here in Nova Scotia that is still trying to go on that journey of cooperative called New Dawn Enterprises. They would probably like to have a conversation because connect those dots again. That's wonderful. So did you make it up to Nova Scotia too?
No, my wife did, and a number of other people on the staff of the Federation over many years. I was in touch with them. I wound up going to there's a similar co-op school in Saskatoon.
Yeah.
I did go to Saskatoon, but I never got to Antigonish. Well, I'm glad to hear
So
that.
this is Heather. This is Heather. I just
John?
want to jump in a moment. Forgive me. I just want to jump in a moment. Actually, Wayne, I did talk to the woman that you work with, right?
Bahia.
And Bahia, yes, and she sent some information about cooperatives. I'm going to send that out to everyone as
Okay.
well. Yeah, which is wonderful. So what we were thinking maybe is to have one of the cooperative, whoever, I don't know, come and speak with our group as well at some point, which
Sure.
would be wonderful. Yeah, and I also want to apologize for that confusion at the very beginning. I thought we were set, but we weren't exactly. So my apology to everyone.
No
Wow.
need to
Yeah.
apologize, Heather. We're just
all
engrossed in this good
all a part
conversation.
of it.
Well, he and
It's
I,
great com-
Wayne and I had talked about it. I thought we were fixed, but we weren't. So it's all right. It
Wayne,
was wonderful.
Wayne, I have one more question. It's more on the personal side.
Yes, sir.
St. Mary's University.
Yep.
I have talked to people there a couple of times about going there and getting a PhD in management with an emphasis on cooperatives. And I just haven't found them to be, well, when I taught at Howard and a number of places, when we were looking to get students, we were all out there pushing to get students. I haven't found that from them. And I just trying to, if you know anything about them or what they're about, or.
Yeah. Could you tell
What
me
might be-
who at St. Mary's you had built
I
up?
don't, I was looking for the emails, but I couldn't find them right away.
That's okay. I would offer two possibilities. I could try to send you some names of individuals down at St. Mary's that may give you a little bit more of an opportunity to have a dialogue. And then I would also make sure that you talk to some of the folks down at the Cody Institute, because that would be, I think, also the opportunity to see what Cody may have to offer in terms of a cooperative program for you.
Okay.
Does that make along the lines of
Yes.
where your journey could take you?
Absolutely, right.
Yeah, because there are some changes that are happening at all these universities. And I do know some individuals that I think I could connect to. So if you got from Miss Gray my email, I will make sure they follow up with that with you personally.
So Wayne, call me Heather.
Okay.
So Heather, you're gonna give us all his email address? Or?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I can't thank you enough, Wayne, for what you've shared with us. It's just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
So Wayne,
I'm not going anyplace. I'm around.
so Wayne, when we communicate with you, so you're saying it's a Wayne without the E?
Yes.
Okay.
So I can't get
Heather.
I grew up, you got to respect people by giving.
We do.
Yeah.
That's all right. Just call me Heather. All right.
My email will not have the E on it to begin with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I address you in an email, I will say WAYN.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, let me just say, Brother Hamilton, that we are deeply indebted to you for the fine work that you're doing and for the fact that you've been at this for a while. Needs to say you are eons ahead of us in what we're proposing. And we just well, I just get the feeling that we can work with you and you'll assist us in any way that you can to help us to come up to speed so that we can look beyond our geographical confines to really get a better picture of how the international community has to address this African diaspora.
Yeah.
When you're saying that you're working through government, that is just mind-boggling because I don't see where the state of Mississippi, the United States government, for that matter, would even embrace
Yeah.
the concepts that you are working on already. So you'll be a big help to us in helping us in a number of ways to formulate our thinking and to put together our cohesive plans of action as to how we move from here. I was happy to hear you say that you'll come back again, and we probably need you back in 2 weeks. So stay ready, if you would, to but after we get a chance to peruse the information that you that Heather will disseminate to all of us.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
I'm certain that we'll have to have many more audiences with you.
yeah, so Mr. Paris, we have to see this as a
Now, whatever you're
reciprocal.
comfortable with. I notice, I appreciate cultures. If you are comfortable with Mr. Paris, okay. I hope you don't mind me calling you Brother Hamilton.
No, I'm fine with that. But
Okay,
this
well, whatever you want to call me with, that's fine.
This has to be reciprocal because I'm on a call with a lot of individuals that I see as my cousins who've got deep knowledge that I've got to take advantage of as well.
Oh,
so I will be also picking you guys' brains. So it's got to be reciprocal.
Absolutely.
The other thing is that there may be the need to carve out and have one or two people be the pointy end of the stick to start to write or start to strategize around some of this stuff. So if there's a small little committee that gets stood up, I don't mind figuring out how we can try to strategize and work together so that we actually are getting some momentum away from the larger group, but a smaller little group that reports back into the larger group as a possibility as well.
I would like that. This is Patricia, because as I said, the UN decade, and I sent that information out to others. There will be a convene at the in Geneva on the 24th, but on the 22nd. By the 22nd, we have to have our documents in to be able, if we want to speak. So I would like to be a part of a small group that could organize a presentation, because we need to be presenting constantly and integrating ourselves within the United Nations. We have the opportunity to do that. We have the opportunity to speak and be a part, because they have, with the decade, they have set up a permanent forum. So we need to be in the forefront of what that forum looks like. And I think after that, they will have the universal peer review. And so we need to make sure that our statistical information, our data, or whatever we're gathering is a part of the universal peer review. So I would like to be a part of a smaller group with you and wherever Heather puts together. Thank you.
Yeah, and Miss Patricia, there's lots of other smaller groups around the globe that you guys will be able to get connected to as well. So it really is an exciting time.
Right, it is. Thank you. Are you with Jabril? Because when you mentioned the flag, and I know the World Conference of Mayors, someone had mentioned the flag that Nova Scotia had, that you all had gotten together. Jabril and the African Diaspora Directorate, the research dynamics, whatever. But anyway, I had heard about your flag before, so that was very exciting. So I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
And I'll send you guys a graphic design of the flag as well.
Wonderful.
I got a lot of to-dos.
Heather, I've got to drop off. This has been wonderful.
Yes,
and
wonderful.
So long, fellas, and I'll see you at the next meeting.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Take care, Pat.
So I just want to mention to everyone that a little while ago, actually, I introduced Wayn to Emery Campbell. We had a wonderful discussion talking about it. Wasn't it, Wayn? It was
Yeah,
just
it was
great.
good.
Emery was
like
on
that.
here earlier, but he's not here now. But it's just sort of talking about both cultures. It was just great. And of course, talking about making the baskets, Gloria.
Yes, that's incredible.
I was thinking about that as you were discussing with us that, I'm sure Emery shared with you his visit to the West Coast there. And, we just felt that kinship even, well, we know Emory from his work
Mhm.
in South Carolina, but we felt the same thing with you with this evening. And
Yeah.
we just, we can just feel that that good-heartedness that comes through, and we're looking forward to continued relationships with you and learning from each other and
Yeah.
appreciating
Thank you.
the work that all of us have been engaged in.
Thank you.
The struggle continues. You all, it's 9, what time is it there? 9:50.
It's late, yeah.
Yeah, it's late. So are there other things to come before us?
I just want to say thank you again. It's been
Oh, yeah,
wonderful.
okay.
Thanks.
Well, we certainly are deeply indebted to you. Thank you all for participating. I think,
Thank you.
his presentation shows the need for our continuity here and making sure that we all stay as close as we can, working in our working groups so that we can achieve the desired results that we all want to see take place, and that is to have our people taking their rightful place in world affairs. And
Sure.
so with that, we'll shut up. Okay.
Wendell, before Wayne gets off, I'm gonna do a personal thing. Wayne, I have a radio show here in Atlanta. Are you available for an interview tomorrow?
I can't fly down tomorrow.
No, it could be a Zoom interview. I'm going to get in touch with you. All right, great.
Yeah, because tomorrow with this government, I'm still not in control of all my scheduling until next week. But
Okay.
we can talk.
All right, great. All right, wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Heather.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
again, Brother Hamilton.
You're welcome.
And all of you, we really appreciate you.
Thank you, Brother Hamilton.
Yeah,
Thank you.
for allowing me some time with you guys. We'll
That has been
Oh,
wonderful.
clearly ours. Yeah.
Okay,
We look
bye.
forward to the next time.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye, y'all. Take care.